Unit 2, Lesson 1, Solving Equations, Part 1. So the learning goal for today is to learn how to solve for x in basic 1 or 2 step problems. So for example, in an equation like this, we would solve for x. So definition, to solve for an equation means to figure out the value of x that satisfies the equation. So if ever you see on a test, solve the equation, it means find out what x is. What's the numerical value associated with x? So here's 3 things that you always need to remember when solving for x. Now, these 3 things might not make a lot of sense to you right now, but once we get into some examples, remembering these things will be very helpful and it will be very clear as to why you need to do them. Okay, so just bear with me for now, it'll make a lot more sense later. So first, when you rearrange the equation, basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to get x by itself on one side of the equal sign. So in my example right here, on one side of the equal sign, on that left side, x is not by itself. X has a +4 with it. So the goal is to try and get x alone. Okay, and you'll see how we do that when we get into the examples. Number 2, whenever you move terms from one side of the equal sign to the other, so maybe I want to move this +4 over here so that x is by itself. To do that, you perform the opposite operation. That's how you move things around. And again, I'll show you what I mean by that in the examples. And finally, whatever you do on one side, you must do on the other side. Okay, so let's say I want to add 4. So let's say I want to subtract 4 to one side. To this left side, you must also subtract 4 on the other side. And that's just so that you don't change the question. Okay? But again, all 3 of these points that you need to remember will make a lot more sense once we start doing examples. Okay, so on to some examples. So example 1, solve for x, then check your answer. So in part A, the equation is x + 2 = 10. Now I think a lot of you can just see that the answer is going to be 8. You obviously know that 8 + 2 is what equals 10. But I need you to learn how to solve equations algebraically, because there's going to be some harder equations that you're not going to be able to just know the answer that easily. So our goal here is to get x by itself. So right now there's a +2 there that's stopping x from being by itself. So we need to get that to the other side. So if we can move that +2 to the other side of the equal sign, x will be by itself, and then we will have solved for x. So think of it as we need to cancel out the +2 from this side. And that's where this opposite operations comes in. Okay, so to cancel out that +2, we do the opposite operation, right? If we subtract 2, that's going to cancel it out. But then whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other side. So if I'm going to subtract 2 from the left side, because that's what's going to get rid of this +2, I also need to add in a subtract 2 on this side. Now when we simplify, look what happens, right? We can combine these guys because they're like terms. 2 minus 2 is 0, so that cancels out. Then we can combine these guys because they're like terms. 10 minus 2 is 8. And there you go. We figured out the answer is 8. Okay? Now to perform a check, here's how you perform a check. So you can check if that answer is actually right. You set up what is called a left side, right side table. So it looks like this. And then you take the left side of the original equation. So here's the left side of the equal sign. And you write it under the left side column. And then you take the right side of the original equation, so that was 10, and you put it in the right side column. Now, you take the answer that you found, so we found the answer was x = 8, and you plug it in to your table wherever x is. So I only have one x, so I'm going to plug it in right here. There's nothing to do on the right hand side because there's no x to plug in. And then you just solve. And if you end up getting the same numbers on both the left and the right side, then you know your answer is correct. So because I got 10 on both columns, okay, my left side ended up being the same number as my right side, I know that my answer of x = 8 is correct. If I did all this and I got, the left side equaled 12 and the right side equaled 10, then I know x = 8 is wrong. Okay? Let's try a more difficult question. So we have 2x minus 3 equals minus 15. Okay, so the goal is to get x by itself. So we need to move the minus 3 to the other side, and we need to move the 2 to the other side. Okay, to decide if you move the 3 first or the 2 first, you look at SAMDEB. So SAMDEB is bed mass backwards, and it tells you the order to do things in when you're isolating for x or trying to get x by itself. So the first thing you need to move is subtraction or addition. Okay, so we're going to move the minus 3 over before we move that 2. Okay, so we need to get rid of this minus 3, so we do the opposite operation to it, which is plus 3. So we add in a plus 3. And we must do it to both sides. That's just one of our rules. Okay, now let's simplify this. So these guys cancel out. Okay, and now we can simplify this side as well. Okay, so we're getting a little bit simpler as we move on. Now we need to get rid of that 2. So that is 2 times x. That's how you read 2x. So what's the opposite operation of multiplication? Division. So I need to divide both sides by 2. Okay, because then these guys cancel out. 2 divided by 2 is just 1. And negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. So my final answer is negative 6. Now let's do a check and make sure that that's correct. So set up your left side and right side chart. From the original question, what was the left side? It was 2x minus 3. And from the original question, what was the right side? It was minus 15. Alright, let's plug in our answer. Anytime we see x, I'm going to replace it with negative 6. Okay, there's nothing to do on that right-hand side. Now let's simplify this. And look at that, we got the same answer on both the left and right side. So because the left side equaled the right side, we know that x is indeed negative 6. Okay, again, if your left side and right side did not match up, you'd have to go back to your question and see what you did wrong. Okay, so I've taught you how to do this one way, right? So the way I taught you is, to eliminate a certain term or bring it to the other side, you stick in the opposite operation and then it magically cancels out. Now that you know that way, there is a bit of a shortcut. Okay, so I'm going to show you a bit of a shortcut. So let's do this again. 2x minus 3 equals negative 15. So again, we want to get x by itself. So we need to get rid of the minus 3 and the multiply by 2. Okay, so we have to get rid of the minus 3 first because it's subtraction. So basically what you can do is you can say, okay, to get rid of this, I'm going to bring it to the other side and turn it into the opposite operation. So now the minus 3 goes over here and turns into plus 3. Done. I'm going to simplify the other side. Okay, now I need to get rid of the times 2, so he's going to go to the other side and turn into the opposite, which is divide by 2. Now I'm going to simplify, and I get the same answer. So this way is just a little bit quicker because you're not canceling out from both sides. It's just a simple, okay, if I want to eliminate a term, I just bring it to the other side and change it into its opposite operation. Okay, so same thing over in this question here. If you were to approach this question in that new way that I just taught, you would say, okay, I need to get x by itself, so I need to get rid of this plus 2. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring it to the other side and turn it into its opposite operation, so it's going to turn into a minus 2. Okay, now you simplify x equals 8. So I find a lot of students like that way better. Feel free to use either way, you just have to know the reasoning behind it. Alright, part C. So we have x divided by 3 equals negative 4, and we're solving for x. So look at x. Okay, it's not by itself, it has a divide by 3 attached to it. So the goal is to get x by itself, so we need to move that divide by 3 to the other side. So when we need to bring the divide by 3 to the other side, what does it turn into? It turns into the opposite, which is multiply by 3. Okay, and then we get negative 12. Okay, and you could perform a left side, right side check. So we write in our original left side, which is x divided by 3, and our original right side, which is negative 4. Now we plug in our negative 12 anytime we see an x. Do the math. Left side equals our right side, so we know that answer is correct. Okay, I'm going to do one more question for you. Okay, so part D, 8x minus 4 equals 14 minus 2. So in this question, it's important that before you start, you always scan and look for like terms, because there might be something you can simplify before you even get started. Okay, and that's the case for this one, right? 14 minus 2, those are like terms. We can combine them, we can subtract them. So let's simplify that first. 14 minus 2 is 12. And now let's start isolating for x. So we need to get x by itself. We need to get rid of this minus 4. And we need to get rid of this multiplied by 8. Okay, so I have to move the minus 4 before the 8 because s comes first, subtraction comes first, before multiplication in SAMDEB. So let's move the minus 4 to the other side, and it's going to turn into a plus 4. Okay, and let's simplify 12 plus 4, 16. Now I need to get rid of the 8, so let's bring the 8 to the other side. Okay, it was multiply by 8 before, so when it goes to the other side it turns into divide by 8. Okay, and now your answer is going to be 2. I'd like you to try your own left side, right side check for that one. Okay, and that's the end of the lesson.